In today's podcast, you'll learn some technical vocabulary related to architecture. These words are not only useful for architects, they're also very handy for more advanced students who want to talk about architecture at a deeper level. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, especially if you're a new listener. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy enough. As you know, we've already recorded a couple of podcasts today, and people who've listened to us in the past will maybe have heard us describe that we tend to record 3 and occasionally 4 podcasts in one day. Any more than that would be a bit tiring. So I'm on a high. We've got a couple under the belt. That means already done. And we're about to do this one. So I'm enjoying the experience of podcasting with you as ever. What about you?
The same here. It's always a pleasure. And speaking of belts, something that a construction worker might wear, we have spoken about building and construction in the past, which is obviously strongly connected to architecture. If you go to inglespodcast.com/272, you'll hear a podcast about building and construction. Now, as usual, we're going to speak about architecture and the specific technical terms they use. And as always, not knowing much about the subject has never stopped us recording a podcast about it. So hopefully, if you are working in this industry or interested in it, you'll find this vocabulary very useful.
So I reckon a word that architects certainly should know about before they actually get into the details of the building is the expression planning permission or planning permit. That is official permission to put up, that means build, to put up or alter a building given by the local authority. So in most countries in the world, if not all countries of the world that I know of, you can't just build something because you feel like it. You have to have planning permission or a planning permit to be able to legally do so. I say legally because
it's a bit of a grey area in Spain, isn't it?
In Valencia, Craig and I have suspicions that this is not 100% strictly observed by all people. Yeah, Craig?
Do you remember the story of that flat I wanted to buy when I first decided to live here in Valencia? I was renting a lovely small flat in the centre of Valencia, very near to the cathedral, and I wanted to buy it. So I spoke to an architect and she put in planning permission to the local authorities, which was declined. They said, no, I'm sorry. The outside of the building is protected and we will not allow you to build an extra room on the balcony. So I left the flat. 6 months later, another person had bought it. There was a room built, a very ugly room built on the terrace, on the balcony outside, which is still there today, 23 years later.
What do you think happened? So we know they built it. That's a scientific fact. Do you think they somehow got planning permission because they have friends in high places, or they just didn't bother to ask and built anyway?
I don't know. I mean, it could be either of those, couldn't it, really? Who knows? But anyway, a bit annoying. But anyway, that's the way things work sometimes here in Spain. The next word is blueprint. So you can see the word blue in that word. You can hear the word blue in the word blueprint. And that's because it used to be on blue paper, although it doesn't necessarily have to be. What a blueprint is a detailed plan or drawing used to design buildings. So it's a step-by-step plan on how you build or how you achieve something.
So a blueprint is a detailed plan where everything is included. A floor plan is a drawing that shows the layout, or you could say the distribution of rooms on a single level of a building. So each individual floor needs its own floor plan. So it's not anywhere near as detailed as the blueprints.
Did you create a blueprint or floor plan when you did your conversion for the flat, when you changed it?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't really call it a conversion. I would just say that I had it done up. If you do up a place, an English phrase or verb, it means you make it look better, change a few minor things, but no major changes. I didn't get rid of any rooms. I simply took a door off the connection between my dining room and kitchen. But apart from that, it was simply basically cosmetic. So I did do a plan. Yeah, I did a plan of the layout, yeah, which then an architect made official and did properly. Yeah. What about you? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, we did. When we changed our flat and did it up, we completely converted two of the rooms. So we knocked down walls and we made different spaces. So we needed a floor plan so that we could show the architect what we wanted to do. So we had a floor plan. The next word is elevation, which comes from the verb to elevate, which is to lift up or put in a high position. And an elevation, when an architect uses the word, is a drawing that shows the exterior or the outside view of a building from one side. So it's how the walls are going up on one side of the structure, one side of the building.
I would never have thought that was particularly important until I realized that looking at my street, there are all the different apartment blocks are all joined together. There's no space between them. Yeah, although they were perhaps built at different times or bits have been added. But I've noticed that the height of the different floors is different in some of them. So some of them are the same, like the building to the left of mine, when I look at it straight on, it has the division of the floors is the same as mine. In other words, the elevation of each floor is the same. But the building on the right, it's different. So where my building has 5 floors, the one next door on the right has 5.5. In other words, their ceilings are lower.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's where I guess the elevation is very important. And I happen to know someone who lives in that building. So I've been in that building. I've noticed, yeah, the ceilings are lower.
The ceilings are lower, yeah.
Yeah. And you notice it from the outside because I was counting. I thought, my friend lives on the same floor as me. So she will be at the same eye level as me. And I looked across like, no, she's actually lower down. And then I remembered, she doesn't have as much space. The ceilings are lower.
So whose building is older?
Mine. The older buildings get more space.
Yeah.
They pack more into the newer buildings. Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, I mentioned before when we did up our flat, so Reza said do up is a phrasal verb. You can also use the other verb to refurbish or to renovate or decorate. All of those verbs work. But to do up is very, very common in conversational English. When you do up a flat, it's very important to know which walls you can knock down and get rid of and which walls you need to keep, because these walls are load-bearing walls. So they bear the load or the weight of the structure or building. A load-bearing wall is a wall that supports the weight from above, and if you get rid of that wall, if you knock it down, you could collapse the whole building.
Yes, sometimes you will see that a building has been gutted. Gutted. Your guts are your insides, your stomach and everything.
Intestines.
Or any animal. So, for example, when you buy fish in the market, you might ask for it to be gutted. You want all the intestines and all those things taken out. If a building has been gutted, that means everything's been taken away and even some of the walls have been knocked down, but not the load-bearing walls. They are the walls you can't knock down. So a gutted building may have only the load-bearing walls, but other walls have been knocked down. But if you knock down the load-bearing walls, the building will collapse.
And sometimes you see very attractive buildings that have been more or less demolished or knocked down, is the phrasal verb, except the front bit, the really pretty front part of the building, and that's called the facade, Facade. And sometimes you see the facade of a building, but there's nothing behind it because they want to construct a more modern building, but they want to keep the character of the facade, the outside facing the street. So the facade is the front or outer appearance of a building structurally. Now, you can also use this word idiomatically because people can put on a facade, which is to give a false appearance. He put on a cheerful facade. Inside, he was feeling lost and unhappy, for example. So to put on a facade is to give a false appearance of how you really feel.
Another word which refers to buildings but gets used metaphorically as well is the word foundation. And that is the base, the bottom bit, on which a building stands. So common sense should tell most of us, even though we aren't architects, that if the foundation is not strong, your building is not going to last very long. It needs to stand on a strong base, on a strong foundation. And of course, that's applied metaphorically. All good movements, governments, systems need to be based on strong foundations. The bit at the bottom, the original bit, the most basic part needs to be strong. Good things are built on strong foundations.
That's why you need a good, strong grammar foundation when you're learning English, because you need to know your grammar. Now, you may have heard of the word integrity, which is a very positive and good characteristic or trait to have in your character. If you have integrity, you have very strong moral character, you do the right thing, you know the difference between right and wrong, you tell the truth, etc. Now, a building can also have structural integrity, which is the strength and the stability of a building. So if you hear someone describe a building as having structural integrity, that means it's very strong and it's not going to fall down very easily.
Yes, I'm gonna stick my neck out here. That means I'm gonna take a risk and open myself up for criticism because I'm not an architect and I don't know that much about architecture. Although here I am talking about it.
As usual.
As usual. Nothing new about that.
As we like to do.
But I would say, and it's true, I have also read about it, but I'm not an expert, that there was a period of time which was, I think, at the moment anyway, is certainly regarded as the period of time when least importance was given to structural integrity as regards building. And I'm talking about kind of the late 1950s, 60s, and into the 70s. By the 80s, they'd begun to take it seriously again. But there was a period of time, 50s, 60s, 70s, when a lot of substandard buildings were made around Europe and the world because it seemed to be a period of time when a lot of housing needed to be built quickly and cheaply. And the obsession was with getting things built rather than quality. And a hell of a lot is an emphasized way of saying a lot. A hell of a lot of buildings from that period have been demolished. They don't stand any longer. Many of them didn't last more than about 20 years because they did not have good structural integrity. It was a period in time where building work was not always as good, or indeed architectural planning was not always as good as it should have been. Would you agree, Craig?
Yeah, I think you're right. You'd call those cowboys, wouldn't you? Cowboy construction company would just build something in the quickest possible time, not worrying about the structural integrity or the materials that they use being strong and reliable. Let's take a quick break here because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast. Before you do start building, it's very common for architects to do a site analysis. We talk about building sites or construction sites. Building site will be a stronger collocation in British English and construction site in American English. A site analysis is the study of a location before the building is designed. So it's to have a look at the site. Is there access to water, to power? How is the wastewater going to leave the site? Those kind of things. So a site analysis.
Another thing that an architect needs to know about is the local zoning regulations. Every zone has its own laws. Those are the laws that control how land can be used. So obviously it depends where the land is. If the land is in an area where there are no geographical dangers and there's plenty of space and it won't bother anybody if you build there, well, probably the zoning regulations are quite lax. LAX, they're relaxed. However, if it's in an area where there are geographical dangers such as flooding or other things such as landslides, then I imagine, or I would like to think, that the zoning regulations will be a lot stricter. Having said that, once again, Craig and I live in an area where we're not sure that 100% of the time they strictly apply those zoning regulations.
No, they don't. In fact, there's one that stipulates or says that you can't build a building or construct anything within so many meters from the beach, for example. But you see that zoning restriction or regulation broken all the time. It's quite sad, really. Another useful expression for architects is the green belt. Green belt. That's not belt that's holding up your trousers. That's some land around a city that has a lot of green areas, lots of trees, countryside, fields, etc. I have a good friend who lives in the green belt around London in a beautiful little village. It's very green, it's very quiet, but it's also very, very close to the city of London. So a green belt, an open piece of land outside a town or city where building is not usually allowed, it's protected.
Now, among the various evaluations and plans, etc., that an architect needs to do, one is, these days, an environmental impact assessment, known as an EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. That's a technical evaluation of possible environmental consequences for large-scale building projects. I mean, if a builder is going to build 2 or 3 or 4 or more big blocks of flats which can hold hundreds of people, they are obliged by law to consider how could this affect the surrounding environment, and an EIA must be carried out and then submitted to the local authority who are responsible for giving you the planning permit.
If an area or a space is described as being open planned, that means there are no internal walls or dividers inside the space. And I worked in London in 3 separate offices, 3 different companies. All of the office space was open planned. The managers, the people on very good salaries tended to be in closed offices, but the people actually doing the work were outside in an open planned office. Have you worked in an open planned office?
Not a big office, no, not really. And it's not something I would like to do, I have to tell you.
Oh, I quite enjoyed it because you can talk to your co-workers. You don't have to knock on doors and go inside and speak to. It's very friendly and it's very social. Maybe get more work done if you're working in a cubicle and you're closed off from everybody. But I liked an open planned office. Yeah, it was quite friendly.
Craig, if I were to say the initials to you, CAD, would you know what I'm talking about?
I would know if we're talking about architecture because CAD is computer aided design, which is a program that architects and planners use in order to design and model buildings. So it's specific software for architects.
And Craig, if I said to you, and I think it's better if I try to put on an old-fashioned posh voice to do so, if I said to you, Craig, you're a cad, what would you think of that?
That's like calling someone a not very nice person, like a bit of a liberty taker. Yeah?
Yep. So that's the word CAD, not the acronym capital C, capital AD, but there is a word in English, a cad, which is almost funny way these days in modern English of saying a not very nice person.
Some rooms and buildings are a bit dark. Not much light gets into the buildings. Maybe there aren't many windows. Maybe the windows are a bit small, perhaps. In that case, you can put a skylight in the ceiling or in the roof so that lets light come into the room or the building, and usually sunlight comes in and it's much nicer because there's much light in the room. So that's a skylight, one word, sky and light together, skylight. A window that's built into the roof in order to let in light.
There could be another function of a skylight. It could also serve for ventilation. If you can open that window, because it may be a window that you can't open, but many skylights can be opened, in that case, the air, and in Britain and Ireland also the rain, can get in. But at least when it's not raining, you can ventilate. So ventilation is the flow of fresh air through a space, which can simply be through a window, or there are other ventilation systems, such as ways of extracting air or pumping it into a room. And of course, an architect needs to think about ventilation when they are planning a building.
Another useful term and word for architects is retrofitting. You can recognize in that word the word retro from before in the past, and fitting, to fit. Retrofitting is when you update old buildings with modern systems. I mentioned before you might see the facade of a building that's quite old, and then they're building something modern behind it. So maybe they're retrofitting all of the building or part of the building. They're making it more modern, but still keeping the character that the building had before.
And as Craig mentioned earlier, you need to be aware that some builders are perhaps not as good as they should be, and they're called cowboy builders.
Yeehaw!
So they don't necessarily live in America and travel around on horses. It's a very particular use of the word cowboy. If someone's a cowboy builder, they're a substandard builder. And maybe they're not qualified or even equipped for the job, but they do it anyway. So, of course, they do a bad job. So architects should avoid working with cowboy builders.
And we've known a few in our time, haven't we?
Yes, there are quite a few in the Valencia area.
Reza, when you think of attractive and impressive architecture, which city or cities come to mind?
Venice, of course.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't think of Venice? Although I've never been there, but everybody knows it's iconic. Also, the Venice of the North. I would think of St. Petersburg, which is often called the Venice of the North. Also in Spain, places like some buildings in Valencia, but particularly as regards the percentage of the entire city or town, Granada comes to mind.
Yes, definitely.
Salamanca,
yeah.
Places like that. I think Spain proportionately has a heck of a lot of impressive architecture. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what you've mentioned, those cities as well. I would add perhaps Rome. It's a beautiful city. Buenos Aires in Argentina has some very impressive buildings. London, I think, parts of London, obviously not all of it, but parts of London's very attractive. And Paris. How can you not love Paris?
A building actually I visited, or I should say revisited recently, just one particular building. If you're ever in Ireland, in Belfast, go to the City Hall. It's beautiful from the outside, but go inside and admire some of the work which could have been on the Titanic, which is a bit tricky to visit these days. Because
it's under the ocean.
It is, yeah. Because most of the work done there was done by the same people, by the same hands of the people who built the Titanic, because it was made at the same time. And the mayor at the time was heavily involved in the making of the Titanic. So he got the same workmen to do the work inside the City Hall. So it's top-notch, state of the art for its day, really good quality stuff. It's a beautiful building inside.
I've seen the outside in films and on TV. It looks very attractive, but I've never been inside, not yet.
Well worth a visit.
Okay. What about unattractive architecture? Which buildings are you not keen on? Which places?
Well, all cities, all countries have examples of that. I guess, although I've only been to a couple of them, but the ex-communist countries particularly seem to have a hell of a lot of horrible buildings, although they also have a hell of a lot of really impressive buildings. But let's be honest, in the communist era of the Eastern Bloc, they made a lot of really ugly buildings, purely functional. They didn't care at all what they looked like.
Very square and uniform and grey and unimaginative.
Not very nice. So places like I've seen in East Berlin, I've seen places, Romania, Albania, Latvia, Lithuania. But in all those countries, I've also seen really beautiful buildings.
Yeah, some contrast.
The period before that. What about for you?
I agree. No, I was thinking of the same two countries, actually. East Germany and Albania, I've both been to. So, yeah, those two countries.
We've both been to Albania.
Yeah.
Can I just make a special mention? Albania is really particular, I think, for one respect. It's quite fresh in my mind because I visited this year. And Craig has visited as well. What you'll find in Tirana, the capital, is the most modern, very pleasant, and apparently well-built, lovely hotels built right beside an absolute wreck of a building, falling down, housing marginalized people, very, very poor, maybe unemployed, not comfortable people. But the hotel right beside them, and when I mean beside, I mean right beside, will be a luxury 5-star hotel. And you see that all over Tirana. Do you remember that?
Yeah, so you were struck by the contrast as well.
It's bizarre, the contrast of
Huge contrast.
Really bizarre.
Reza, how does natural lighting affect the mood or maybe the function of a space?
I am a huge fan of natural lighting. I think a building which doesn't take advantage of natural lighting can never be a nice environment to work in. You need sunlight. Human beings need sunlight. If sunlight's not getting into a building properly, it's going to be a sad, grey, literally
miserable
place.
So big windows, skylights, those kind of things.
Not necessarily big windows, but letting in enough light. In Valencia, you maybe don't want to make them too big because then you'll get boiled by the heat of the sun. But certainly in Britain and Ireland, you can afford to make those windows big. It depends where you are, right? If it's a really sunny place, maybe you shouldn't overdo it either.
And also it depends on the orientation of the building. If it's facing the arc of the sun, so when the sun rises in the morning or sets in the afternoon, is the sun coming in at a particular angle, particular time? That's also a consideration.
Yeah. Having said that, in a place like Valencia, which gets very hot and sunny in the summer, make sure you have a tip for people who are maybe thinking of buying property here or doing up a house or something. Have very, very good blinds. Persian blinds, persianas, for when the sun is coming full pelt through your window. You don't want to be sitting beside that in August. You need good blinds to block off the sunlight in the summer when it's too hot. That's very important.
And as we speak, my blinds are closed at the moment because we're recording this in the middle of the summer here in Spain. Why might an architect choose an open plan layout, do you think?
I think it just makes, I was going to say it makes, no, makes it look, no, it actually physically makes things more spacious. As well as looking more spacious, I guess they literally are more spacious. You've got more space, and people generally like space. People don't like being enclosed. That means put into a small space. People like space. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I agree. Also, we spoke about light, so more light coming into a space when it's open. And in office blocks, having that open space makes people work together and communicate together. So it's easier to get work done, I think, if you're speaking with colleagues in an open planned office.
And Craig, do you think retrofitting is better than demolishing and rebuilding?
I like it. Yeah, I like preserving original buildings and the old style, especially places that are particularly attractive and go back like hundreds of years. Why not keep the character? But of course, those buildings need to be retrofitted because they're just not modern enough. They need to have different electrical systems, different plumbing, more eco-friendly materials. So I'm all for saving the facades of the buildings. What about you?
Yes, definitely. A place I imagine is retrofitted, although I haven't seen the blueprints, but I suppose number 10 Downing Street is retrofitted. I really like the idea that even to this day, the British Prime Minister lives or carries out business from a little terraced house, well, quite a big terraced house, in the middle of London with just a normal kind of door to get in. But there is the British government inside, or the core of the British government. I like that idea, but I imagine it's retrofitted. But I like the fact that for a couple of 100 years, we've kept that building as the place for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, not as impressive as the White House maybe, but yeah, I like that idea too. Well, now it's your turn to practice your English. Are you an architect? Did you find this episode useful? And if you are working in another profession, but you've listened until the end, maybe you would like us to create an episode teaching vocabulary from your profession. So if that's the case, please let us know. Reza, how can people contact us?
Well, probably the easiest way is to leave us an audio message, a voice message. We've got a link in the show notes. It's very easy. Just go to speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast and leave your voice message there.
And if you prefer to send us an email, you can write to me. I'm Craig, Craig, at inglespodcast.com. Or to contact Reza, write to belfastreza, Reza, at gmail.com.
If you're a Spanish speaker and you want to improve your English with free or paid resources, visit the Mansion Ingles website. You'll find it at mansioningles.com. Or if you want to look specifically for additional paid products, you could browse the online store. It's at store.mansioningles.net.
And as usual, we'd like to thank our lovely Patreon supporters. And you too can join our Patreon program and support the show. And by doing so, you get access to the transcriptions of this podcast so that you can read every word that we say. And additionally, you will get a monthly Zoom chat with me so that you can practice your speaking more informally. To sign up to the program, go to patreon.com, that's patreon.com/Ingles podcast. And we really value your support. Reza, who are our more recent Patreon supporters?
This month, the list has been increased by the addition of A. Reina, Maria Lara, and Liliana Torres. So thank you very much for joining the list of Patreon supporters.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our lovely Patreon supporters. Reza, what's next week?
In next week's episode, we're going to talk about 5 fables from Aesop. We'll talk about what is a fable and who was Aesop.
Well, you'll find out next week. So thank you for listening this week. Until next time, it's goodbye from Reza.
And it's bye-bye from Craig.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend so that more people can listen. And we remind you that the music is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.